Okay, second little short one is I just wanted to touch again on, did a reading last night on why Middle East peace will be won by warfare by the Israelis. They will end up attacking Iran more openly every few weeks and months that go by. And something that has to be understood about this is that the Gulf Cooperation Council is obviously in on it. It's just that there's only so obvious that they can make it. This idea that that the Sunni are now attacking the Shia Republic via the Jews is something that the Ummah will never recover from. Really, it'll this is why, therefore, MBS has to come up as he has with a reformed form of Islam, which I know there's somebody who's going to be like, reformed Islam has already happened. I know, reformed Islam has already happened, and it's actually key to jihadists and the worst of the worst in the Islamic world is, and that's not Wahhabism. That was the stuff made up by Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, who wasn't an Afghani, anti-colonialist, who is and I believe Freemason, or at least he was an occultist, or he was favored in occultist circles of Western Europe. And so, what was it? It's, I believe, ISIS is technically the group. Is it Salafi? That's it, the Salafists. That's it. So the Salafi Islam is, if I remember correctly, the idea of reformed Islam, with the idea being, just like how supposedly it's that Martin Luther had in his reform movement, that Luther has people go back to the source documents and interpret them for himself. Well, Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, in creating the Salafi movement, he actually also wanted people to go back to original Quranic texts, not necessarily Hadith, and be as Muhammad. Now, what version of the Quran he was asserting to use, I don't know, but this is way back. This is if you look him up, you'll be like, this is a long time ago. But it took a long time for that to become a movement that could be exploited by Western powers as a part of, quote unquote, anti-colonialism. That what it was is that you had to get people who fundamentally did not listen to the imams any longer. They didn't listen to moderate imams who were, who obviously in some way, shape, or form were not, they weren't standing up against the colonial powers in the Middle East or within the Ummah. And the Ottoman Turks were weakening. And so I just wanted to start there. That a big part of this is the sort of unknown history by a lot of Americans of the Salafi movement. And Salafism is one of the things that MBS wants to crush. But now you're also seeing that MBS wants to end the power of the Wahhabists. And then beyond it all, from what MBS did in his recent interview, that was a really big interview, and that this isn't the first one he's done along these lines. MBS has said this in Arabic a number of times, and it was a big deal. Like, they were big deal announcements of what he was saying. They were very well shot. Some of these were done in such a way that he obviously was kind of like an advertisement to the world and the West. And so he says, what was it? The Muslim Brotherhood is a cancer that must be excised. With the Muslim Brotherhood being Banna, the Egyptian al-Bannas, specific version of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan al-Muslimin. And so, oh yeah, that's hot. That's hot stuff. Where are my hot stuff clothes? Hot stuff. Oh yeah. And got my water. Oh yeah, drinking water. Don't worry. So so people have no idea that Barack Obama was playing around with, and not just Barack Obama, that this looks like this was a massive effort by the Pentagon over, it looks like about at least 20 years. And there does seem to be something that links this all the way back to the fall of the Shah and the revolution, because we have too many people who are in the Obama administration who were actually present during the revolution and were there. They moved shortly before, and they were like in their family, multi-generationally, their family was involved in industry there. I think it's like Peter Strzok's dad had something to do with planes or helicopters or something like that in Persia. And so what this ends up making is this ends up giving us an opportunity then at some point to ingratiate ourselves to fundamentally this a movement that was going to have control of not just oil and gas, but really the important part about Iran is the Chabahar port project, which is being developed now with Turkey and Russia, they're trying to develop it with Turkey and Russia. Now, I didn't know the Chabahar port project was actually a very well-known thing when Britain invaded. Yes, I'm sorry. The USSR invaded Iran so as to seize the corridor that goes up to the Black Sea. And so therefore they could actually have weapons come in or weapons and supplies come in from the Indian Ocean, and then they could easily make the weapons go up from the Indian Ocean to the Black Sea, and so this is also why Putin tried to cultivate relationships with Erdogan as well, and that this is a constant trouble for him to pull this off. So that's now the geographical basis, right? So this is why these people are fighting over this region. This is what's important to them. The next is, how are they going to win? They're going to win because Israel is using weapons that probably violate a variety of laws of war. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that is just too far ahead technologically. And they are doing what they are doing while there is confusion, while nobody can really stop them. There's nobody who can muster the organized effort. So what you're seeing is automated weaponry used at a level that we've never seen before. That Israel, one, will destabilize people, groups and people through nonprofit corporations, NGOs, such as Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen. Even though he made his whole career on racism and sexism, on making fun of gays, suddenly he's this humanitarian who is speaking on behalf of the Rohingyas and other refugees and Muslim refugees. Everyone, oh, well, you see, he changed. Or maybe he's just a propagandist. And that he knows that his career will be over if somebody cancels him. Just made a little video on why what you need is the sensibilities of middle-class, college-educated white liberal women to cancel people. That doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. What any man does, simply, it doesn't matter what he does. Just like how we never discussed that both Hitler and Mussolini were a favorite of Time magazine. It doesn't matter until the educated white women decide to cancel him. And once that happens in the West, then it's over. Then you're off the list. You know, you can be executed. People could go to war with your country. And I remember this in high school with accusations against Saddam Hussein's government that we now know were definitely just simply Western propaganda about like what was going on with him, but also was that we had supported him. We had supported him, and not even, this wasn't an unknown. This was a well-known thing, and then suddenly, you know, do you know he's systematically raping women? Did you know that he's taking children, he's taking babies out of hospitals and chucking them out of windows or something? I forget what that one was, but it was really like he was doing something to babies as they were like in the doctor's office. You know, he was annihilating the babies. So, you know, it's, oh look, he's raping the women and killing the babies. You know, it's not that, oh, he systematically tortured soldiers, because college-educated liberal white women are not as concerned about that as they definitely would be concerned about you attacking what they like, other women and babies. So, and then all you got to do is look for that. Notice that all the refugees, they're totally cool until you actually know that they are the crime problem and the rape problem of Europe, which you can't say because effeminate sigma, delta, or effeminate gamma, delta, epsilon males, stuff like people like Vaush, they're like, oh no, the Muslims aren't raping the white women. It's the white men are raping the white women in Europe. But, you know, they just are. Don't worry. I have nothing to base this on. I don't listen to the victims. I'm not looking into any of the reports of this or any of the videotapes about it, or say the Facebook live rape of a woman by refugees in Germany or something like that. No, none of that's happening. And it wasn't until you had an overwhelming number of European college-educated liberal white women who are liberated and really smart. They're the smartest of the smart, until they were completely shamed into this, where they finally had to deal with the fact that they were probably now starting to just not be able to do things because of all these guys who they knew. They knew what was going to happen if they were out and about in Cologne. And so finally, you're seeing these governments change you're seeing the governments change form. And you're seeing them change refugee policies now. So it was shame. You had to shame them. You had to shame them tremendously because it's a status symbol. Being down with the refugees is a status symbol. And until that changed in popular culture, the victims didn't matter. And so one of the things I've been thinking about with the Middle East is, because nobody wants to criticize Barack Obama and his foreign policies ever. They don't want to look into the details of Barack Obama's Middle Eastern policies in the Ummah. All you've got to do is just simply act like he was just the greatest thing ever because he was the black president, and that he cannot be criticized. But also note he cannot appear anywhere within the Ummah. Now, who appeared with his wife in front of all the leaders of the Ummah and set on a dais, welcomed with open arms, that Muslim leadership from Africa all the way to Indonesia were down with Trump? So what it was is that there was obviously the rich guys, the rich productive men got talking. They connected notes. Mohammed bin Salman ran the security forces of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, from what I understand, is, and I've heard this from both people who are critics of the war machine and people who are pro-Israeli, pro-Israeli basically. Both sides now admit that Saudi Arabia is helping fund the experimental weapons development in Israel, and that Israel is using especially very, very advanced drone technology. Now, Technology G recently, GD Jizzle, announced the programmable fiber that the Army is instituting. It's a kind of like you're wearing something that you could program. Okay, so this is something that has been known can be done. My teacher said he saw this demonstrated when he was in the armed forces. So this would be at the latest the 80s. I didn't believe him at the time. Then I saw the Japanese version in, I think, the earliest 2000s of a programmable fiber. Guy was wearing an overcoat, and the overcoat basically makes itself look like what's behind it. Well, Thomas Wichter had something that he showed from actual field video, and you absolutely, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about what you're seeing. This man was wearing a garbage suit. This was like a ghillie suit, except it looked like garbage. All of a sudden, from a pile of rubble, a man just stands up. And he reaches down, and it turns out he was what Thomas Wichter was referring to as a fast grenadier commando, or fast commando. These guys were, like Sprinter does not describe what the images he was showing. He was showing at full speed. He actually had to slow the images down quite a bit because these men were so fast. So what these guys would do is they would very, very incrementally creep up on, say, a position on a second or third story in a building. And then what they do is they have a bag of grenades, and fundamentally they just come rising up right out of the rubble that's right underneath the position and just chuck like a bag of grenades. Pull it, set off the charge, and then toss the whole damn bag of explosives into the position. So it's overkill, but that's the point. Then there's things about munitions that he absolutely, again, had footage that what you could see this didn't make sense. An explosive round so powerful that it explodes, and it makes the man who is holding the camera, the camera's facing him, and his hair blows. It blows like the wind blew. And it was perfectly in time with the explosion sound and everything. And bam, his hair blows, and you could hear people saying, in shock. You could hear that there's total shock surrounding this man. They said some, they all start making exclamations in Syriac or in Arabic or whatever they were speaking. But the important part is that when this munition goes off, the shockwave hits and there's no shrapnel. And that's what Thomas Wichter was very, very concerned about, is what was that munition we just saw. And because he's fascinated with munitions, he actually did as much searching as he could. And here and there he's found, a lot of kind of theoretical weapons designs that fit what he has found on video from Syria. This is in the field in Syria. And that what it appears is that Trump and the GCC were running some type of operation that thwarted something. It was thwarting some other group, and that group would be a part of the Western military complex. So Israel and the GCC are basically saying, they're like, you screwed us. We screwed them. And we can't. There's no diplomatic way of dealing with it. And now we're seeing that. That there's no longer any legitimate diplomacy. going on the part of the Democratic Party. They seem to be absolutely, they have sort of the Pentagon on a short leash in a way that is definitely political. And that we've seen this from the recent general gay pride thing that general was into. But and then there's the concrete missile that Israel developed. So this is a type of smart bomb that is dropped from above, and it's tipped with concrete so that it could crush a car, but only one section of it. This now has definitely been used, and there's actually real articles on this. There's real footage and photos of the leftovers of somebody, and so that was one that I think I specifically remember was used in Iraq after the taking out of that Iranian general, if I remember correctly. And they took out that Iranian general, and either before or after, no, it might have been a Yemeni, yeah. Another thing, so NGOs pushing bullshit so that we will stay in the Middle East. The Houthis, we are not told who the Houthis are, because we are told they're some dirt poor Yemeni people that everyone's really cruel to. The Saudis be so mean. Well, the thing is, they're not referring to the Houthi movement. They're referring to the Houthi ethnicity in the press. The Houthi movement is a different thing. The Houthi movement is a movement that is a student movement, quote unquote, a student movement. You see, and as long as anything's a student movement, again, no matter who ends up dead at the end of it, it's A-OK in the press and among the white, liberated, educated class, because students did it. And students are always right, because you see, they have kids, and kids go to school, so they're students. So, and they love their kids, and students. So, the Houthis are actually a movement that, if you take a look at them in Wikipedia, they declare death to America, and not so much even death to Israel, but they say death to the Jews. So whatever this Yemeni movement is that's going on, and how it's funded with all these weapons, even though these people are supposedly incredibly poor, these poor Houthis, they're the poorest people of the poorest place in the poorest part of the world. But somehow these dirt poor people are able to fight off the powers of Saudi Arabia, who sit on the basically on the bourse of Aramco, and Aramco is something like a $4 trillion company. So somehow these super poor Houthis are able to go up against the power militarily. This isn't that they're doing like strikes and like blowing things up in Saudi Arabia. No, they're actively field engaging Saudis. But how could they afford it? It's not possible that they can beat the Saudis in the field, because the Saudis are sitting on $4 trillion of Aramco. So they could just keep throwing weaponry at the Houthis forever. So how are the Houthis even able to do anything to them? So it's just a tale by NGOs, and that in fact we are probably engaged in helping the Houthis get weapons, and that nobody wants to believe it, because it's just it simply is that NGOs and the news will tell you a story, no matter how illogical. People believe it because they're NGOs, which are nonprofits, so they must be believable, and the news, which is the news, and it's usually hosted by a pretty college-educated white liberal woman, or what appears to be so nice and liberated, college-educated, very clean, looks like your friend. You want to be as pretty as her, so you'll believe it, because then you believe the same thing as the pretty girl on the news. And that's very important, that hierarchy and that status is the smart pretty girl says I'm right. So Israel is using robot tanks outside to keep Gaza in control. That's one that I'm amazed. That's gotten no No coverage. Hello, Convo Couch. Hello. How is it that you guys don't know this? Oh, you're on the left. And the bailiwick, and accuracy is the bailiwick of the right. So the other thing that probably violates weapons of war stuff is the fireball gun. This is one that still is a weird FLIR not front loaded, but infrared. It's a type of infrared system. I've kind of invested in it. So FLIR caught a dude firing a weapon in Syria that had the accuracy of a rifle, but what you saw coming out of the rifle traveled too slowly. It traveled so slowly it lobbed. It actually lobbed, and it was like a street sweeper kind of pace. Bong, 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 bong. So these weren't grenades because they didn't travel like grenades should. And they didn't leave the proper heat signature that grenades should. At least not, sort of. Because when you see them hit the target, and the target was a type of window that somebody was mounted in, and they're firing out of this building and out of this window. And when you see these rounds, the heat signature makes them look like small orbs, and that these orbs stay consistently hot from the time they leave the barrel all the way until they get to the target. And then when they get in the window, you see fire come bursting out of the windows. So it's some form of incendiary grenade device, not like a fireball gun, like in in something like Contra, like in the video game Contra. There's also a thing that Thomas Wichter caught on video and this isn't him. He found video and was like, "What the hell is that?" And one of these things was what looks like a drone that's about the size of like a child's lunchbox. About the size of maybe, like a normal sized domestic cat. And that when this drone flies toward a building, because there was a position that was mounted on a balcony, and they were tucked way back into the building. And this is like a 2-story building is what this image that I saw. And so they're tucked back from the balcony, so they're able to fire from the balcony. And this is a building made completely of stone, so they're chewing it up with machine gun fire. But then this thing about the size of a cat comes flying along and just goes into the building. And then bang. So Israel is working on a generation of weapons and is using them and fielding them. And there's very scant evidence of this. But it only if you're looking to try to figure out what just happened, what was that weapon, what just blew that up. And that as you slow the footage down, as you look, you start seeing, holy crap, there's something that enters the frame and then boom. So this is why this is one of the things. Why aren't you hearing then about the Gulf Cooperation Council? Look those words up and try to find a speech about the Gulf Cooperation Council, and you will find that the only person who's made a speech, the only person who has said these words out loud outside of me, Thomas Wichter, is the former president, Donald John Trump. In fact, he had a speech that he over and over and over again says Gulf Cooperation Council, Gulf Cooperation Council. The entire anti-war movement is lost on this. They don't know they don't take the Gulf Cooperation Council seriously because they don't take Muslim countries seriously. They think these are backwards religious people that can't get their shit together, and they want to believe that. They have to believe that because of their disdain for the religious, and really the general leftist disdain for cultures that will not change in the way they like. Now, the oddest part about that is how nobody's dealing with the fact that MBS has said openly he wants to extend the vote in Saudi Arabia to women. He wants women to be able to drive. He wants women to be able to attend more university and do more in society. Nobody will cover that part of his story. The reason why is because this fucks up something that the Barack Obama administration was into, some project that they were up to with the JCPOA, and this has all gone to shit. And now there's no way back. Israel's now openly like, Ben Zonah, you can't stop us. And no, America can't, because right now America is too heavily divided within, it's a house divided, so nobody can, there's no political will to even address this with accuracy or candor.